Hockey Night in Belmont is back with another hockey card reveal. Went back to Heroes and Comics to try and get the rest of this series. It's the 1977 WHA O-Pee-Chee set. So we're talking about the 1976-77 stats. This is the very last WHA card set they released through O-Pee-Chee, because 1 year later, in 1978-79, the league folded. And as everyone knows, Edmonton Oilers, Quebec Nordiques, Winnipeg Jets, and the Hartford Whalers all jumped to the NHL in 1979 for the 79-80 season. So let's get on with this. So remember, I only needed 21 cards to complete the set, and we're getting closer. First up, Ken Broderick. He was with the Edmonton Oilers, then he went to the Quebec Nordiques. He was actually traded after he played 9 games in Edmonton in 77 before being traded to the Quebec Nordiques. This is not his rookie card. His first NHL card was with the Minnesota North Stars in 1969, where he only played 7 games. He also had a card with the Boston Bruins, and he had another WHA card. So he retired after this season, didn't play any more professional leagues. This card has a crease in it, which kind of sucks, but so I got a discount on that one. Joe Morris, Birmingham Bulls, center. 77-78 would be his last professional season, while he played in the Pacific Hockey League for a year after that. But he had played for the Pittsburgh Penguins, St. Louis Blues, Buffalo Sabres, and in the NHL before jumping to the W and playing with the San Diego Mariners. And when they folded, he went to the Birmingham Bulls. Next up, we have Blaine Stoughton, Cincinnati Stingers, right winger. I already have this card, but mine's in such rough shape, and this one's in very good condition, that I did an upgrade. He was drafted by Pittsburgh Penguins, and then he was traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Rick Kehoe. Played for the Cincinnati Stingers, Indianapolis Racers, and then when the Racers folded, he went to the New England Whalers, and stayed with Hartford Whalers right into the NHL until he played his last season with the New York Rangers. Was a pretty decent player. So that's just an upgrade card. Next, Real Cloutier, Quebec Nordiques, right winger. Cloutier was actually a first-round pick, 9th overall by the Chicago Blackhawks in 76, but he never played with the Blackhawks. Went right to the W, had an excellent career, scored 75 goals, 54 assists for 129 points in the W. In 78-79, their last year of existence. Then he went to the NHL with the Nordiques, playing his last few seasons with Buffalo. Put up some awesome numbers in the W, and his numbers in the NHL weren't bad either when he finally got there. Next up, Rich Leduc, center for the Cincinnati Stingers. I was always surprised that Columbus got a hockey team, considering that Cincinnati already had a connection with professional hockey. I would have loved to have seen the Stingers back. Rich Leduc had spent a couple of years in Boston, then went to the WHA, played for the Cleveland Crusaders, Stingers, Indianapolis Racers, Quebec Nordiques, and back to the Racers. So in 77-78, he would get traded halfway through the season to the Indianapolis Racers. He would come back to the NHL with the Quebec Nordiques for 2 seasons. Don McLeod, goalie, now with the Quebec Nordiques. He had been with the Houston Aeros. Prior to his WHA experience, he played 18 games in the NHL with Detroit and Philadelphia. Then he played for the Houston Aeros, the Vancouver Blazers, Calgary Cowboys, Quebec Nordiques, and Edmonton Oilers. So he got traded to the Nordiques. He'd play 7 games and then get traded to Edmonton. But he hadn't played for the Houston Aeros since 1974. So they couldn't find an updated version of his Calgary Cowboy uniform. The Calgary Cowboys had a lot of goalies that year. The year prior. Next up, Blair McDonald, Edmonton Oilers right winger. I have a couple of his NHL cards from the 80s. Played a couple of seasons with Wayne Gretzky and the Edmonton Oilers. He was a 6th round pick, 86th overall in the 73 draft, which by today's standards would put him in the 3rd round, by the LA Kings. He never played for the Kings and went right to the W, played with the Edmonton Oilers, then the Indianapolis Racers, and then back to Edmonton for their final 2 seasons in the WHA. His first NHL season, he put up 46 goals, 48 assists for 94 points. Obviously, he played on a line with Wayne Gretzky. production slipped the next year, and he was traded after 51 games to the Vancouver Canucks. He would go to a Stanley Cup final with the Vancouver Canucks, but never really panned out in Vancouver. Obviously, not playing with Gretzky didn't help him. Mike Rogers, New England Whalers. Rogers was a 5th-round draft pick, 77th overall by Vancouver Canucks. Never played for the Canucks, jumped right to the W. Played for the Edmonton Oilers and New England Whalers. Wasn't a bad goal scorer, not a great one. And when he got to the NHL with the Hartford Whalers, he had 2 40-plus goal seasons before getting shipped off to the Rangers. He would play 8 games with the Edmonton Oilers in 85-86 before hanging them up. All right, we got Larry Lund, center for the Houston Aeros. Houston's a team that should have came in the expansion. They were very popular in Houston, but they folded once they realized they weren't going to go part of the merger. Undrafted, played for the Houston Aeros for 6 seasons. Won an Avco trophy or 2. Not sure how many. This card's got a small crease in it. Most of these cards are in actually really good shape. A couple of minor dings in that. But these cards have been fairly good, except for the Broderick card. Next up, we got Brian Campbell, center for the Edmonton Oilers. He played 260 games with the LA Kings and Chicago Blackhawks before jumping to the W. Played with the Philadelphia Blazers, Vancouver Blazers, Cincinnati Stingers, Indianapolis Racers, and then the last 2 seasons with the Edmonton Oilers. Gary Lariviere, defenseman, Quebec Nordiques. I think the NHL should bring back the Quebec Nordiques. They should never have went to Colorado in the first place. This is his rookie card. He had been drafted previously by the Buffalo Sabres, 83rd overall in the 74 draft. Never played with them. Played with the Phoenix Roadrunners, Quebec Nordiques, Phoenix Roadrunners again. When the merger happened, he came to the NHL and played with the Quebec Nordiques for 2 years before going to the Edmonton Oilers. He was with Edmonton when they went to the Stanley Cup final but lost the Islanders. Was sent to the AHL after that, never got another shot in the NHL. Obviously, Edmonton was getting better. Reg Thomas, right winger for the Indianapolis Racers. This guy had been drafted 2nd round, 29th overall in 73 by the Chicago Blackhawks. Never played for the Blackhawks. Blackhawks must not have offered a lot of money because Bobby Hall left the Blackhawks. Reg Thomas never reported. A couple of these guys never went to the Chicago. So he played for the Los Angeles Sharks, then the Michigan Stags / Baltimore Blades, because Michigan relocated to Baltimore that year. Indianapolis Racers, Cincinnati Stingers, back to Cincinnati for 1 more year, and then made the jump to the NHL, played for Quebec Nordiques for 39 games in their first year. Now here's a name we all know, Paul Henderson, left winger for the Birmingham Bulls. Everyone remembers Henderson for scoring the game-winning goal in the 72 Hockey Hall of Famer. Played for the Detroit Red Wings and Toronto Maple Leafs. Believe he won a Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings early in his career. Have to go back and check that. A lot of guys in Toronto didn't like playing with Harold Ballard, so they jumped ship or got traded. So Henderson was offered more money, went and played with the Toronto Toros for 2 years. And when the Toros couldn't make a go of it in Toronto, they relocated to Birmingham, became the Bulls for the 77, 78, and 79 season. He did come back to the NHL and played 30 games with the Atlanta Flames, where he had like 7 goals, 6 assists for 13 points before hanging them up. He did play in the Colonial Hockey League's Birmingham Bulls too for 2 seasons. So that's definitely a legend card. All right, next up, Wayne Wood, now with the Birmingham Bulls goalie. I see that is an ugly jersey, the Calgary Cowboys jersey. Don McLeod played for them. He was actually a New York Rangers draft selection, 6th round, 83rd overall in the 71 draft. Never played with them. Played in the WHA for Vancouver Blazers, then the Calgary Cowboys, traded to the Toronto Toros, and then played 76-77 with Birmingham. So they couldn't find a Birmingham Bulls uniform for him for that year. O-Pee-Chee was really slipping. He never made it back. He never made it to the NHL, but he played in the Colonial Hockey League, the AHL, and the East Coast Hockey League. Bounced around there. Next up, we get the WHA checklist. Very short checklist because there's only 66 cards in this set. This checklist is actually in good condition, just a soft corner right there. And there's a little ding right here. But other than that, it's in pretty pristine condition. No marks on the, no one checked off their WHA players. That's of this set that I bought, these bunch, this is the most expensive one. I think he gave it to me for $8. It was listed at 10. Could have gave it to me lower, but the store's got to make money. And last, we got the captain, Frank Mahovlich, captain of the Birmingham Bulls, left winger, another Hall of Famer, the Big M. Both him and his brother had played for the Montreal Canadiens. Frank Mahovlich started his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs, won a few Stanley Cups with them. Then he went to the Detroit Red Wings. Then he went to Montreal and won a Stanley Cup with them in 1972. Then he won a Stanley Cup with them in 1971 and 73. So he's got more than a few Stanley Cups. 20 games with Montreal, he scored 14 goals, 13 assists for 27 points in the Stanley Cup Finals. I think he might have been the MVP had not Kenny Dryden come along. After the 74 season, he jumped to the WHA because they were paying more money, let's face it, to the Toronto Toros. And when they couldn't make it go in Toronto, they moved to Birmingham, and that's where he ended his career. This is his last year, his last card. He also played in that famous Summit Series with Paul Henderson, both him and his brother Pete. The Mahovlich brothers, both played for Montreal too, and Detroit. So there we go. We got 16 cards, one of which I already have. It's just a replacement card. And now I only need 5 cards in the whole set. Now, who are these cards? Some of them should be easy to find. I do need an Anders Hedberg card. I also need John Garrett, who was a goalie in the NHL for the Hartford Whalers and the Vancouver Canucks. Ron Plum, number 49, Al Smith, who played for the Hartford Whalers and also played for the Colorado Rockies. And then last but not least, Bobby Hull, which would be the most him and Gordie Howe are the 2 most expensive cards in this set. So I'll have to find those. 5 cards and we got the set. Can't wait to do that. Like I've said before with WHA cards, I love the history. I love all the player trades and movement, and how Peachy had a hard time. Must have had a hard time keeping track of who went where, what team went where, because teams would get up in the middle of the season, would relocate. Reading stories about how players would get paid. Some guys would get paid in cash at the airport, or after practice there'd be a table with a bunch of stacks of cash in paper bags, or guys would have to, on payday, they get their check and then rush to the bank because the first couple of guys would probably get their full pay, while the guys who were last might not get anything. Stories like that. I love the uniforms. I love the names. A guy from my hometown, he actually played for the Cincinnati Stingers. 75-76, Bruce Abbey. Played only 17 games, had 1 goal, 12 penalty minutes. But he was a defenseman. Didn't get a card though, which kind of sucks because I would have loved to have gotten his card. But anyway, any hockey card fans out there, let me know if you guys collected the WHA sets. And leave comments in the comment section. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Until next time, this has been Hockey Night in Belmont.